Hello there, welcome back to Memory Gamma. Today, it's a very short one. We're going to have a look at the very smallest faction in the game. It's so small, in fact, there's no ships for it. In fact, there is exactly 5 cards. We are going to look at the Q Continuum. So, as you can see, I have the Enterprise up. That's simply so I've got a ship here so I can show you the upgrades. And we're going to go through. Now, because there's only the 5 cards, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about each one, rather than just a whistle-stop tour. But again, there's 5 cards, so this will not take long. So, the Q Continuum were a booster, or a prize reward. You got a captain, admiral, a normal captain, a crew, an elite talent, and a question mark. And that was it. Now, being the Q, we do of course have have all the faces you will recognise. So, captains, we have the Q female. Now, this is Susie Plackton in her Q mode from Voyager. Now, until the new faction packs and the Captain Iden, the Herosian hologram captain, she was the only printed captain skill 10, and at 7 points. Now, that sounds a lot, however, the Q Continuum do not pay a faction penalty when they go on any ship. So she's 7 points on any ship in the game for 10 skill, which is, it's okay. I mean, you can get 9 skill for 6 points. You're paying 1 point extra for 1 extra skill. Again, if you want base captain skill, it's a good shout. Her action is not brilliant, but I'll explain it, but it's not massively brilliant, but there are times where it could be used. So it's an action, place an additional shield token beside your ship. When you take damage this round, you remove that shield token first. If all of your shields are destroyed by a single attack this round, and your ship suffers hull damage from that attack, they do an additional point of damage. And then if it's unused, remove it during the end step. Now, that sounds like an awful lot of words to basically say, action, have 1 extra shield, and if you take hull damage this round after having all your shields destroyed, suffer more hull damage. But it's an additional shield token. Now, unlike a lot of these additions, it doesn't say that this shield token is anything special. It's just a shield. So, for example, she allows you to place a shield token beside your ship. Well, hey. Which could enable you to cloak if you had no remaining shields, because now you have a shield token. It doesn't say that this shield token can't be used to trigger other abilities, which almost all other add additional shield abilities do. So anything that you can do from triggering having a shield token is fine. Extend shields, repair stuff, although obviously that would be removing it during the end phase. But since you'd have 2 start of end phase abilities, you can choose the order of activation. So yeah, there's a handful of abilities where she could be useful. However, if when you do that shield, all of them are destroyed and you take hull damage, you do an additional damage to yourself. So she has the potential of hurting you, but it could be something. I mean, it would require you building, with that in mind as this is something I am planning on using at some point. But, it's never, it's never going to be a bad thing unless you get alpha struck. If you get alpha struck with that bonus, then yeah, it's going to hurt even more. But that's the whole point of an alpha strike. So, she's quite a nice possible idea. And the other one, we have Q himself, John Delancey. Now, 2 skill, 1 point. The absolute opposite spectrum for captain skill and captain points. But they'll have a talent slot, which is nice. He is also an admiral at -1 skill. Yeah, he's not the best being an admiral. He's not the best at being a captain either, to be fair. But his ability is you rotate your ship 180 degrees. And then you get Orcs power tokens equal to the speed of the maneuver you did this round. So, it's quite useful on, on a ship that hasn't got a come about. You could do a 1 straight. You could do a 1 speed maneuver, rotate the ship 180 degrees, get you an Orcs power token. Now, that is not it doesn't have to be a straight maneuver. It could be absolutely anything. Yeah. So you can do yourself a straight, your bank, you could do a hard turn, and Q gives you a 180 spin. It's a really nice ability. You are obviously, it gets a number of Orc's power tokens, equal to the speed of the maneuver, which means that if you do it anything more than speed 1, you're going to be getting more Orc's power tokens than you can get rid of quickly, and you're probably going to be losing actions. However, there is multiple ways you can get quality and do stuff with Orc's power tokens or without actions. A nice place to put this Captain Q would be on the original series Enterprise, the original version, which allows you to do action bar actions even while you have Orc's power tokens. It doesn't have a come about, so you can do your 2 hard turn as a white or a 4 straight or whatever you want. Action Q, spin the ship 180 degrees. And then you can keep acting. If you've got more ways of doing action bar actions due to, other things, yeah, go for it. You can still do those. He's not a bad idea. But, again, it's an ability you're not going to use an awful amount of time, but it's possibly going to come in clutch, as it were. And also, if you need, a very cheap captain, he's 1 point. On any ship in the game, he's 1 point for a talent slot. And skill 2, yeah, but he's 1 point. What else do you want? So, he's good if you need a cheap captain. We'll put him here in the Admiral slot. Now, we have a crew upgrade. Quinn, from the Voyager episode Death Wish. Quinn acts basically like the red shirt's resource card. However, he's cheaper. So when you're defending, during the compare results step, you can discard Quinn to cancel 1 hit or crit. He's a 2-point evade token. Perfect. Now, he's a bit better than that because he can cancel a crit result. So if the enemy's got something that enables crits to penetrate shields, Ferengi missile launchers, not concussive charges, magnetic pulse, transphasic torpedoes, anything like that, or if it's just something that you don't want, or if they realise that, the crit's going to get through, you can cancel the crit. So it's nice. He's definitely a nice thing to have. And again, no faction penalty, so he's a 2-point evades token at any ship in the game. No problem there. We have a question mark upgrade. Q2. So this is from when Q gets turned human, and this is the Q that is sent to look over him and watch him and restores his powers. Now, this upgrade counts as either a crew, a question mark, a crew, an elite talent, a tech, or a weapon. Your choice. Now, this counts as. It doesn't just fill the slot, it does count as that upgrade. So if you have something that says discount crew upgrades, and you put him in a crew slot, he will be cheaper. Same as if you have something that discounts talent slots, or if you have something that says, your talents are X amount of points, or get deployed face down, or whatever, he counts as that talent slot. Now, he is a damage transfer. Whenever a friendly ship at range 1 of your ship receives damage, you can discard him and transfer all the damage to your ship. So, brilliant on a support ship. Absolutely brilliant. Now, it does have to be actual damage, so it can't be just the attack and then you defend against it. This is the damage has been resolved. It would now be the deal damage step, and you'd go, right, when they would receive damage, discard it and transfer the damage to your ship, and then you suffer the damage. So when it gets to the deal damage step, you would discard Q and then transfer all the damage over. Now, he works quite nicely on a tiny ship because he could literally fly alongside in a shuttlecraft. And basically the enemy shoots the big ship, does a bunch of damage, then Q just goes, yep, all on me. And yes, it killed Q's ship, but it was entirely there just to do that. And it can be basically a damage sponge. It gives whichever ship you want to protect, it gives it attack freedom. Now, being as it could be a crew or a tech or a weapon, there is any number of ways you could keep it around if you really wanted him. So, if he's a weapon upgrade, you could keep him around with B'Elanna's codes. Or look, you discard him. Nope, I'll discard B'Elanna's codes and keep Q2 around. You could use him as a crew upgrade, and then you could keep him around with Weyoun 6 or Beverly Crusher or McCoy or any of the other upgrades which say, just do this rather than discard a crew upgrade. So you could use him multiple times, which if you're getting attacked multiple times is never a bad shout. He could also be if he's a crew upgrade, he could be transferred over with a transporter action or with mods to move him around the place. He has a lot of flexibility. Now he is 5 points, he is expensive, but for what is effectively a cheat death that's stored on a friendly ship, it might be exactly what you need for your capital ship. You know, if you've got a big ship and you've got 2 support ships, one's carrying, say, intercept, and one carries Q2, your main ship's got 2 uses fundamentally of cheat death. When it would normally take a bunch of damage and be destroyed by an attack, you know, you can use your 2 ships to absorb that damage. If you even put Q2 as a crew upgrade, you could then use any number of the copying ones, Biomimetic Gel, Odo, Vendorian Spy, any of those, to copy him, and then every ship could have one. So that's a really nice potential ability. And the final one is Think Fast. It's a 1 point talent slot. 1 point talent. Which is, again, if you've got 1 point spare in talent slot, throw it on. And basically, it's a discard for a 1 bonus dice. When you attack, you can discard the card and disable 1 upgrade to gain an attack dice, or do the same on the roll defense step for a defense dice. It's a 1 point card that gives you a 1-time bonus 1 dice. Again, nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. So, that is the entirety of the Q. Now, so they are a separate faction, and the only special rule they get is there's no faction penalty for the Q on any ship. So, you know, it's nice for filling things in. It's nice for, there's some nice abilities there. Said Q2 works really nicely if you're going to lean into the whole damage redirection. You work him in with, say, the Kraxon, which is a Cardassian Galor class that has the ability of, when a friendly ship suffers damage, transfer any number of that damage onto your shields. You know, if you upload the Kraxon with a bunch of shields and sit that on one side, and then you have Q2 on the other ship, your big ship might actually just never be able to be killed between all the damage transferring. You know, it might be a way of going, rather than building up the ship to be super defensive, you build up a couple of ships to be damage absorbers. And rather than taking everything on your ship and absorbing it, you just hand it off to your friends. It's a possibility. Said Captain or Admiral Q gives you a lot of maneuver flexibility. The female Q, again, it's probably the weakest of the 5 cards, but there is use for it. As I said, it doesn't stop you from using it as a normal shield token. So if you add that, if you've got something that gives you a captain action as a free action, so Riker, Enterprise E Riker, or Original McCoy, you know, or Enterprise A McCoy, sorry, you know, make your captain does its action as a free action. Boom, have an additional shield token. Okay, so you've got an additional shield. If that was your only shield, you now have 1 shield. Congratulations. If you're on a cloaking ship, you could then cloak again. You know, if you've got something that says, if you have active shields, get this bonus, it might turn your refractive shielding back on for a turn. You know, while you have active shields, the enemy can't do this. It might be a way of reactivating, said, multi-adaptive shields, refractive shields, multi-spectrum shields, any of those shielding cards which require you to have active shields. Now, obviously, it doesn't stop some of them, because some of them are discarded as soon as all your shields are gone, but it's a way of continuing to use those abilities. Again, you would have to choose to bring the female Q in, you know, to utilize that, but that may not be a bad thing. Yes, it's 7 points, but you get 10 skill, you get a talent slot, and, you know, the enemy goes, boom, all your shields are gone. The ability to go, actually, for this round action, have a shield token. Congratulations, my refractive shielding is back up and running. That, you know, that one action has just given you all your defensive tricks back again. And remember, the shield token is only removed in the end phase. So obviously, at the start of the combat phase, if you've got some stuff that says, you know, you could use that then at the start of the combat phase. You could disable it for a bonus if you've got something that does that. Anything up to and including the start of the end phase that requires the shield token can be triggered. As I said, because it says if the shield token is unused, remove it during the end phase. since it doesn't specify a particular point in the end phase, it's at the start of the end phase. If you've got another thing that says at the start of the end phase, like extend shields, bring that up very quickly. End phase, if you have one or more active shields, 3 time tokens on this card, Orc's power token, and pick a friendly ship. So you get to right, start of the end phase. I've got both of these abilities that are going to trigger. I'll trigger extend shields first. At this moment, I do have an active shield, thanks to the female Q. I'll repair my friend's shield, and then I'll discard the token from the female Q. Now, it does require you to actually have that shield, but, you know, again, it's no guarantee, but it's a nice ability. I do like it, and, you know, there are some builds we could do with that. Again, think fast. It's just a 1-point throw in for a bonus dice. Quin's a nice cancellation thing. But I think Q2 is, with the preponderance of new cards that allow you to maintain and keep around, especially crew upgrades, Q2, I think, has probably got the most scope for being used multiple times. With his ability to, if you be a crew upgrade, you could keep him around indefinitely. And since he's whenever they receive damage, you know, if that happens 3 times in a turn and you've got a way of keeping him around for all 3 attacks, you can do it all 3 times. Now, of course, his ship would have to survive all 3 shots, but, you know, it could be a single point of damage. Whenever they receive damage, it doesn't have to be from an attack. They could crash into a minefield and you go, nope, don't want to hit the minefield damage, Q2 will take it. In the same way the Kraken is whenever a friendly ship suffers any damage, not just from an attack. It's an important point to remember there. But yes, that's the Q. That is literally the 5 Q upgrade cards. Hopefully we might see some more of them. I would like to see, you know, the Civil War Q, you know, the Q Council that's sitting in Judgment, maybe Q Junior, Keegan Delancey, you know, elite talent of Don't You Aunt Kathy Me. So, yeah, that's the cards. If you have a particular favourite here of the 5 cards, then let me know, drop it in the comments. If you particularly like or don't like any one of these cards or think they're not particularly good, drop me a message again, put it in the comments, and I'll have a read and we'll see what we can do. I might, how I said, I will try and do a particular build utilising one or more of these cards at a later point. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.